Welcome, alumni. I'm Lori Pines, a partner in our litigation department. And given that I've been at the firm for nearly 30 years, I hate to admit that I may be a familiar face or at least a name to some of you. Since May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it would be helpful and interesting to tell you about the firm's Health and Wellbeing Committee. I'm very proud to be the founder and the co-chair of the committee along with David Strumeyer, who many of you know, who's our executive director. We created the committee in 2019, but it's taken on an even greater significance during the pandemic, as you may imagine. The initial impetus for the committee, though, was a growing awareness, in the legal industry, throughout the legal industry, really, that many lawyers and personnel in law firms were really, and companies were hurting from the stresses of the profession. It's a very stressful profession. And studies that were done long before any of us had ever heard of COVID-19 had shown that so many lawyers and a large percentage and law firm personnel were experiencing depression and were suffering from different feelings that were hard to deal with, and were engaging even in alcohol and substance abuse in very large numbers. In addition, I had noticed over the years, about past 5 years or so, that really more and more people, my mentees, my colleagues, my friends, they were really coming to me to talk about issues that were really health and well-being issues. And in fact, to be in really a better position to help people, I actually took a course at Duke to obtain specific training and certification in health and wellness coaching. And I learned a lot from that course. My biggest takeaways was really how overall health is affected by so many interrelated dimensions, that it's not just our physical health, but our mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health that all factors in to our overall well-being. And it was so interesting to take that course. And to be sure, our firm was already doing extraordinary things on the wellness front, for offering, of course, a host of health-related benefits, a wide range of them, to establishing an on-site health center in New York, which is wonderful, to sponsoring programs on mental health, and up to being also a signatory to the ABA's Wellbeing Pledge. We're doing all of that. But I said to myself, I think there's more that we can be doing. And really to just broaden these efforts and emphasize what we're doing so that everybody, really knew about it and could benefit. So I reached out to David Strumeyer and our executive partner, Barry Wolf. And it was heartening because they were so responsive and so enthusiastic about us forming a committee to really address and broaden these efforts. We have a very clear mission of the committee, and that's to find and implement the most effective and inclusive ways to advance wellness throughout the entire Weil family, the extended family, which includes all of you. And because health is your wealth, there's nothing more important than that. We can't, none of us can do anything. We can't function. We can't do our jobs if we're not healthy. So it's just a real recognition of that. And of course, during the pandemic, the committee has just, as I said, taken on way more significance and, really went to make every effort to support and educate everyone at the firm on ways to stay physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy in these, very dangerous and uncertain times. So we made sure, first of all, that everyone at the firm, knew how to access the range of wellness benefits, the offerings, the resources. We have a portal page. A lot of people had never really accessed these things before. So part of this was education. And then we did a host of programs throughout the pandemic. We're still doing them, on a wide range of topics to help people. Topics like nutrition, exercise, sleep, stretching. We had a great stretching program, and dealing with anxiety, depression, and loneliness, which has been such a terrible issue that people have struggled with during the pandemic. So we hosted these programs, and now that people are starting and hopefully are going to be getting back to normal, that has its whole set of stresses, which we're going to be dealing with, soon, and trying to do programs on this whole, reentry, and people have called them cave syndrome, issues. So it's kind of next on our agenda. It's a never-ending agenda. We also don't want people to ignore their own health, their regular health, and make sure that people are doing what they would normally be doing to stay healthy. A lot of us didn't go to the doctors and things during the pandemic. So, with that said, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jada Jackson, who recently did a wonderful program that, was fantastic for our lawyers on self-care and handling emotional fatigue. She was a terrific speaker. We had a wonderful feedback on that. And let me just, do a little minor, introduction, a little formal introduction for Dr. Jackson. She's a licensed mental health counselor. She's president of the Total Life Counseling Center. She's in Dallas. I know she's in a stormy weather today, and I hope she has great sunshine soon. And she's agreed to answer a few questions. So Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lori. It is my pleasure.
Well, it's great. And you've become someone you're going to get repeat calls, because we really, people got so much out of what you told us. So let me ask some questions for this audience so, they can get some of the benefit of, of your terrific tips. And let's start with, look, there's so many sources of stress and emotional fatigue right now. I'm sure you deal with these, very often in your your counseling practice, but do you have any special advice for lawyers? I mean, most of the people watching here are lawyers. What would you tell lawyers that are facing, these issues?
Relax and take a step back.
We're not good at that, Dr. Jackson. Tell us how to do it.
Exactly. And I have to say, I'm actually currently in MSJ program in healthcare. And my best friend is an attorney. And sometimes I'm like, you're so uptight, you're stressing me out. You're stressing me out. But here, Lori, I think that it is important to note that, first of all, just being an attorney alone means that you are in a high conflict environment, because oftentimes people are going to come to you because they have a problem that they need you to fix or to solve. They have questions that need to be answered. And if it is, a very amicable outcome, fantastic. But I'm going to say a large percentage of your encounters are high conflict. So one thing that I would say for constantly being in a high conflict environment is to make sure that you understand your triggers. What triggers you? What causes your stress levels to increase? What causes you to feel that you have to protect yourself? What causes you to feel that you have to fight, right? And so, again,
and you got to understand, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we litigators fight for, a living. When we say we fight people's battles so they don't have to. So we are in fight mode. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's part of it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So it's being able to find that time where you separate your job from your everyday life and who you are, making sure that you are not constantly in fight mode. So let me just, Lori, if I could just tell you what happens when you're in that constant state of fight, because in our previous session, I talked about the fight or flight response. I talked about that stress response, but just think of yourself sitting in your car with the car turned on, it's in park, but your foot is on the gas and you're pressing the gas and the fluids are running through the engine and the carburetor. And then all of a sudden it starts to smoke and you recognize, there's a problem. That's what happens when the chemicals are released into our brain constantly, when the hormones are released into our bodies constantly. It's like we're on overdrive. We are more susceptible to physical illness. Our stress levels are higher, and therefore we become more susceptible to negative coping skills like drinking and substance abuse issues.
Mm-hmm. And some of us feel like we're flooring it. We're not.
Exactly. You're not.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting when I have, teenage son who said, he's in the middle of doing an exam saying, you're stressing me out, when he's very stressed. So
Exactly.
it's really difficult. So we need to work on these skills for sure. And lawyers, that is, as I said before, one of the reasons we started our committee, because lawyers, are really one of the most inherently stressed positions, dealing with difficult problems on very quick, time frames. Sometimes it's very stressful. So we know we're all stressed. We get it. But why is it so hard for so many people to practice self-care? Like, even when they know they're faced with grades, we know we should. I know we should. So how do you find short and long-term solutions to that?
Sure.
And do these things, actually do them, not just talk about them and agree about them. But what do you suggest, Dr. Jackson?
I really suggest doing something very small. Start off very small. It's not, you don't have to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 times a day. I would just say do a very brief body scan that will allow you to recognize where your tension is in your body, and you can release it just in the moment. And that by itself, what it will do is it will lower the anxiety, it will lower the stress, and it would also give you an opportunity to identify what is bothering me in this moment. And so a body scan is very simple. I'll just tell you how to do it, but it's closing your eyes, making sure your feet are flat on the floor, or you can lie down and do it.
I'm trying to do it while you're speaking.
Well, okay, go ahead.
No, I don't want to close my eyes, but I know the spot where the tension, I literally know the spot on the body. So it's.
Yes. Where's your tension, Lori? Where do you hold your tension?
It's this one, it's literally in the shoulder, and it's particularly on one side, and it's there. You can feel it. So,
and that is how you identify, okay, I'm stressed now, because it's so interesting, Lori, because I had a printout from the chiropractor, and it showed me all of the areas where I held my tension. And she told me, she said, hey, you aren't supposed to, the body isn't supposed to be stressed all the time. So you have to fix this. And so if we can identify where we are holding our tension, we can take the necessary actions to minimize the tension, right? It's harm reduction is what it is. And so when we're talking about a body scan, it's simple. You close your eyes, you take in a deep breath, and you through your nose, and you let it out through your mouth, because when the oxygen flows to the brain, it automatically signals to the rest of your body to relax. And that's what's most important. So you continue to do that until you're in a relaxed state, and then look for the tension from the top of your head, and you're going to scan all the way down to the floor, to your feet and back.
It's very interesting. I know that there's some, sort of apps and things like Calm and Headspace. The firm actually makes Calm available to all of our personnel, which has been, people really have started to use it, especially during the pandemic. But I do think, they do have some materials on body scan there. You make it very direct and simple, but, in case they're having issues with that, I think it sounds like a wonderful technique I need to get better at. So, are there other stress reduction techniques that you find are most effective? Like, is there any that you think, our audience would be very surprised to hear about?
Surprise. I don't know surprise, because, we're in kind of this self-help era where we've tried a little bit of everything. However, one of my go-tos is music. I think that we underestimate how important sound is. And again, we're talking about in the brain, the sensory cortex, we're taking in and bringing in information. And if you just have a playlist that the type of music in that playlist really gets you motivated, and it's a stress reliever, and you can just get lost in the music and the songs, and that is an easy way to begin to minimize stress. And so people may be surprised how easy it is. Now, if you're listening to music that causes you anxiety, and there are some music types that do that, and maybe the lyrics are not as positive, then again, it's going to stress you out even more. So I would say that, but music is a really easy go-to.
That's wonderful. And I actually have personal experience with that, because one thing I've tried to do is do more walks. And I've heard being in nature can, help, or going for a walk outdoors when it's been safe during the pandemic. But
Yep.
to do it while listening to music,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it even more relaxing. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that sounds, that sounds right, at least for me, and a great tip for everybody. So that's wonderful. I've heard you use this term, compassion fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what does that actually mean? I think people would be interested to know.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, there are many stressors and disruptors that we experience over a period of time. And experiencing these constant disruptors, or experiencing these constant stressors, or you may have even heard me mention triggers. If we're experiencing these things over a long period of time, it can lead to compassion fatigue, or it's just this sense of being completely overwhelmed, or feeling backed against the wall and feeling just burnt out, like I just can't take it anymore. This is more than I can handle. So it's just that innate feeling of being, I'm just burnt out. I can't do it anymore.
So when that hits you, what's the first thing that you do? Because obviously that may be the time when you just go, I can't take it anymore, that you do turn to substances, right? Like you just want immediate relief. What's the best thing that you do at that moment, Dr. Jackson? What would you say is like the best thing to do?
In that moment, I would say acknowledge where you are in the present, in the moment. We have to be mindful in order for us to be able to acknowledge that we have a problem. So for your attorneys, for those who are feeling overwhelmed, just stop and take a look around and say, what am I doing? What am I doing in the moment, or in this period of time, that is causing me to feel irritable, fatigued, just agitated? What are those things? So it's the awareness. And I have three things that I usually say. I say awareness, knowledge, action. Awareness, knowledge, action. So you have to be aware first. Then you have to gather the data, do some research, understand what's going on, why is this happening, gather that data, and then create a strategy to move forward.
Is part of the awareness you recognize you're not acting like yourself, like you're getting more hysterical about things that you normally would be at least dealing with in a different manner. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's being touchy about things. It's blowing things out of proportion, or I would call it what's called a faulty cognition, which is over catastrophizing. And that is making something very small much larger than it actually is. It can be a number of things. We become more irritable. We may, again, not feel very depressed and not able to get out of bed. It can be a number of issues that come up. And it's being aware that all of a sudden, things have changed for me and I'm not quite myself.
I've heard you use this term, over catastrophize. I think that's the right word. Is that when you just start imagining the worst case scenarios and let your mind run away? And is part of the awareness that you say to yourself, I have to stop. I know what I'm doing and I have to stop that? I mean, is that?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And I mentioned this.
Because lawyers are great at that. We can always see all the problems. We're trained to do that. Okay.
Right. And that goes back to when I said you really have to disconnect really change the hat, change the role. If you are an attorney in this period of time, unplug and find that space where you don't have to be, because having that in your personal life and your professional life, that means that you're going to have your foot on that gas pedal way longer than it needs to be. So I want you to shake it out and, get that stress out and all of that good stuff. But to your point, over catastrophizing. So again, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, essentially what I believe is what you think is what you feel is what you do. So if you can identify the faulty cognitions or the faulty thought process, then ultimately you can shift your perspective ever so slightly. It doesn't have to be a big shift, just enough to have awareness that I'm thinking something that may not necessarily be true, or I'm thinking something that I may be over catastrophizing, or I may be having a black or white thinking. It's no gray area. It has to be this way or it has to be that way. There's nothing. That's a faulty way of thinking. And so if we can identify those faulty thought processes, then we can start to shift what we're thinking about and ultimately change how we're feeling about a specific situation in our lives, and then change how we make decisions, change our behavior and our action. And that goes back to awareness, knowledge, and action as well.
That's fantastic advice. That was beautiful. So thank you so much for that. So I'll just sort of ask you one additional question, that, I've been thinking about a lot, at Weil, as you heard from my sort of intro here, we've developed, a series of resources that can help people. And we have a program in place, to deal with well-being, because we've recognized that it's vital. It's oxygen, right? But what advice, would you sort of recommend to lawyers whose companies or firms, don't have such a program in place? What should they be thinking about?
Getting a program in place. That should be it's so important. And Lori, let me tell you why. People are people, right? Whether you're an attorney, or whether, like I told you, I work with the Major League Baseball Association, and I work with high profile athletes, and, there's a lot of stress and pressure that they have. And so by the time they get to me, they're like pulling their hair out. They're like, we need something now, right? And people are people. And as we explore how to be better people, it means that we have to look at ourselves in the mirror, and we're not accustomed to doing that. We're not accustomed to emotional management. It's like, what does that even mean? We're not accustomed to thought modification or changing how we think about something in order to get a different result. No, what we think is usually what we think. So I would encourage everyone to have some sort of program in place where you can have small groups where people can chat, kind of like you and I are chatting, and they can have a space for anonymity, and they can talk, and they can have groups to have these discussions. But then I would also say, continue to have the educational webinars and in-person in-person workshops and conferences that says, hey, you know what, we're going to talk about this issue, and we're going to give you very definitive, practical, applicable solutions to your everyday issues. And not for it to be such a taboo moment or a stereotyped moment, recognizing that we're all in the same boat.
That's something we really emphasized, that, people were having, at least during the pandemic, feelings, and, people who had never before been depressed or had issues. And, we wanted people to know that we're all experiencing, different feelings in these unprecedented times. Like, stresses we've never had before, behaviors that we've never had before. So everything you're saying, I think, is true all the time, and got very accelerated during the pandemic. And we hope we're on the other end of it. Things will get back to normal or near normal soon enough. So just to draw this to a close, Dr. Jackson, do you have any other final thoughts or tips or anything about, helping lawyers, helping all of us, deal with these stressful times?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, I would say, for your lawyers and whoever's watching, is to remember to have compassion for yourself. I believe that you all function in a very, very high capacity. Not everyone can do what you do. And I believe that many of you are probably the best at what you do. So I would encourage you to give yourself a little compassion and to take care of yourself for sure.
I think we should all try to do that. And, that was wonderful advice. And I thank you, and we all thank you so much, for your time, for being with us, for the program you did for the firm. And we wish you, great being well and having great sunshine very soon in Dallas.
Sunshine, yes.
All right.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Lori.
Okay. Take care, Dr. Jackson, and we'll talk with you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.